In this short video workshop, I'm going to show you how to do proper SWOT analyses that work. So we are now at the third bullet point in our strategic marketing plan, which we have called SWOT Analyses of Segments. SWOT, of course, being an acronym for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So we're going to ask the following questions. By segment, what value is required by the customer? And what value are you offering to entice the customer to buy from you? And you'll see the third bullet point says avoid swags, which is a mnemonic for scientific, wild-aimed guesses, as shown in the following slide. Let's start by dismissing as irrelevant and just plain wrong the type of SWOT analysis taught in some less discerning business schools and on many marketing courses. This is shown here in this slide. We lecture all over the world, and in every hotel syndicate room in every town and city in the world where there are conferences, we see flip charts like this. Just look at threats for a moment. We see words such as the weather, competitors, government legislation, the Koreans, etc. And guess what? Under opportunities we see exactly the same words, although I must say that the Koreans don't make it onto the left side. Then, to make the whole effort seem worthwhile, they add at the bottom actions, improve communications, then they all go to the bar for a drink. This kind of generalized, unfocused SWOT analysis ends up as being a sort of my head is in the oven, my feet are in the fridge, so on average I'm quite comfortable. It might just work if you focus on a specific segment, but we really don't recommend using this methodology at all. Apologies for this somewhat complicated slide, but we are now ready to roll our sleeves up and start the process of completing SWOT analyses on our market segments. The first point is that a small team of 4 or 5 people should find an environment in which they will not be interrupted and should be prepared to be totally open-minded about the task to be undertaken. The next slide is the template to be completed. The second slide after that is an example, and it can be seen from column 1 in those slides that the exercise should be completed on a segment. Hence, if you have discovered 6 or 7 segments from your work previously, you will need to do 6 or 7 SWOT analyses. So set aside time for conducting proper SWOT analyses on segments. And as I've said, the following 2 slides give an example of the process of setting marketing strategies for each SWOT analysis. So the step-by-step process for an effective SWOT is as follows. Identify the critical success factors, the CSFs, that influence the customer's decision. There are usually not more than 6 really important factors, and we recommend that you keep it down to probably no more than 5. Secondly, assign an importance weighting to each critical success factor so that the weightings for each segment totals 100%. Thirdly, identify the key competitors for each segment and score performance of your company and each key competitor on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is very poor and 10 is excellent. Limit this to a few competitors. Again, we suggest perhaps no more than 2. Fourth, multiply the weights by the scores and add up the weighted scores for each competitor. Fifth, assess your relative strength by dividing your score by the best competitor's score. Sixthly, identify the key issues from the analysis. And 7, Note that you can change your relative business strength by focusing on improving your strength on the criteria that matter most to customers. And the last point about this complicated slide is that you really should involve a multidisciplinary team in completing SWOT analyses. So, for example, you might include on the team a salesperson, a customer service person, perhaps a distribution or channel expert, and even on occasions an accountant. This, then, is the template you are asked to complete for each identified segment. We should stress that you need to think carefully about what the critical success factors are, and particularly how important each is to the customer, in other words, the weightings. This is an example of a completed SWOT analysis on a segment. Please note that the critical success factors 1 to 4 in this particular example are a kind of shorthand for what the customer considers to be important. For example, you must fully understand the real meaning of thought leadership. Equally, if service was a critical success factor, since this could mean anything from on time in full to answering the phone in 5 seconds, whilst it is acceptable to write down the word service in your SWOT, you must understand what it really means to the customer. Now, assuming you have completed all your SWOT analyses, you can now begin to think about what improvements you need to make to the critical success factors. This slide is a simplified example of what we mean. If you look at this fictional example, the service score has been increased from 7 to 9. In reality, when completing your own plans, you would increase firstly those critical success factors with the highest weights and those that would result in the greatest improvement in your competitiveness. If you have been doing what we recommend, you can now proceed to set strategies for each of your important segments or products for markets. You can use the next slide to detail these strategies, work out how much they're going to cost you, and who is going to be responsible for carrying out the necessary changes. This is a relatively simple method for ensuring robust strategies to meet your objectives based on rational analysis. This strategy setting phase is shown in this particular template. We think it's self-explanatory. What you're doing is increasing the score of a critical success factor, which of course is the objective. Then you describe the strategy for achieving this, the actions to achieve the strategy, who's going to be responsible, and of course what the approximate cost is, as this will eventually become part of your budget. This slide just summarizes some further hints on doing successful SWOT analyses. Firstly, critical success factors are in the eye of the customer. Perception is reality. Let's remember that. 2. External validation is best. Market research, that is proper market research, of course, is ideal. In business to business, sometimes you can fill in these forms with a customer. You can also consider involving channel partners, and if necessary, use internal cross-functional teams, as I've already said, of people who are close to the customers in that segment, such as sales, service, market research, R&D, and so on. Thirdly, validate the results against current financials. And fourth, different segments are likely to have different critical success factors, or at most the same critical success factors but with different weightings. If they're identical, either you need to do your market research or your segment is wrong. To summarize, Critical success factors provide a customer-focused way of assessing the strengths and weaknesses of our offering. Where possible, try to obtain a customer view. Otherwise, use a team of those who are close to the customer. And finally, validate the results against current financials, by which I mean the SWOT weighted scores compared with the weighted scores of competitors should reflect approximately their comparative profitability. This is the end of this short module.